Alright guys, here we are in part 2 of Grande 1. Let's look at the underneath. This Jeep has some unique features to it, which I'll point out. Okay, let's look at these e-brake cables. We're going to want to disconnect those. Now, they come through these two brackets and then onto the brake lever. Pretty simple. Bring them up over the axle and the track bar like this. So when you pull the body, they're not snagging. This Jeep does have airbags, which is not normal. We've also got a suspension level sensor for the air system, which you won't have. In fact, this has something I haven't seen many times, but it's got actually a vehicle speed sensor driven off the transfer case hub, so that the faster you go, it changes your ride height. You're not going to have that either. We're probably going to replace this cross member. We've got all the fluids drained. We've got the yvette canister out. Now, I might want to say at this point, get yourself some bins to put your parts in. Organize everything that you take out neatly. Get a bin to put all your hardware in so you're not losing parts. Okay, so we've got all the fluids drained. Drive shafts are out. E-brake cables. Now, depending on the year of your JK, these are your body mounts. Your two rear body mounts, and this is a rock light or a mall crawler light, whatever you want to call it. You're going to take these out. Now these rear ones are a little bit larger. I believe they're 18 millimeter. Then, depending on the year of your JK, these body mount locations may be used or they may not. I find in 2010 and newer, they don't use these. Excuse me. You can see that he cut his exhaust pipe off. Normally your muffler would sit right here, but he cut it off with a supercharger, and it does sound kind of nasally. So let's go back and look at these body mounts now. Now you're going to have 1, 2, 3 on the side rails, and then you're going to have this stud right here in the front body mount. Now this stud is kind of important because when you put the body back on, that's what's going to index the body on the frame. You want that stud right in the middle of the hole. If it's towards the front of the rear, that's not where you want it. You can buy yourself a little bit of room if you have clearance issues by shifting the body, but start off with putting that right in the middle. It's obviously a Rubicon. We got our sway bar disconnect. Just leave that plugged in. You do have to disconnect your locking axles on the Rubicons. You're going to disconnect your C300 connector, which we'll show you from the top, but that's this connector right here. This goes between the chassis and the body. These are some aftermarket lights and winch. We'll deal with that. You are going to take these transmission cooler lines off, and they are a pain to get off. They're up in there, and you need a release tool. I would just cut them if you're not going to reuse those lines or need them. Again, we have a level sensor on the front control arm for your air suspension ride height. You're going to disconnect your transfer case cable and your transmission shift lever cable. We're going to leave the exhaust in. We'll take that off when the body's out. These engine mounts will be cut off and the new LS mounts will be installed. Now, as far as the yvette canister goes, we're choosing to put the muffler where the yvette canister was. Now, it's pretty easy to take this yvette canister mount and put it up in this space above the axle. You can come off this coil tower here and then make a bracket that comes off here, and it works out pretty clean, and you're not spending 50 or 100 bucks for an aftermarket mount. And then of course you're going to have to bring your tubes over to it. This is your filler neck breather, and this is your gas filler tube. Now, I might want to say something about that. If you have fuel spit back on your JK, this is called the intermediate tube. I suggest you go to the dealer and buy the intermediate tube with the one-way valve. It pretty much eliminates the fuel spit back. I find even the recall for the fuel tank doesn't do it, but that intermediate pipe does. If the dealer will sell you one, they're they're a little difficult to get. So what we're going to do is we're going to mount the yvette canister up here, and then we're going to put a muffler here, and I'll show you the exhaust setup later. The exhaust is going to come through here between the skid plate on the fuel tank and the transfer case, so everything will be above the cross member. Now, one thing I do suggest you do is do not leave your fuel line and purge line here. You can see even on the stock setup it gets pretty close to the exhaust. We're gonna pull these up over the skid plate here across to the transfer case, and that will keep them out of the heat of the exhaust. So let's lower the vehicle down. That's pretty much everything you have to disassemble or disconnect on the bottom, and let's see what we got to do on the top.